Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today we have ISFJs and ISTJs live. And so Jordan, would you like to tell us a bit about you? You're muted.
Sorry. My name is Jordan. I'm an ISFJ. I'm a Enneagram 1, Wing 2, social subtype. I'm blast, consume in objective personalities. I could run down the list of all of the models, but I won't. I run a coaching service called Restored and Rewired, where I specialize in relationship dynamics utilizing type, and I'm a mom of 5 kids and we homeschool.
Cool. And Roger?
Hey everyone, so I'm Roger, ISFJ, Enneagram 9, still trying to figure out which wing I am. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's nice to be back here again.
Excellent. And Samuel?
Hi everyone, I'm Samuel. I'm an ISFJ, a type 1 wing 9, 23 years old.
Sweet. And Rob?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rob Schmidt. I'm from San Francisco, California. I'm an ISFJ, 7 wing 6, SOX, SX.
Excellent.
Hi, everyone. This is Danna. I'm an ISFJ 6W5 in the SPSO. I'm based in Manila. I work in human resources and I dabble in type theory.
Cool stuff. And Jane?
Hi, I'm Jane. It's also nice to be back here. I'm an ISFJ, Enneagram 6. I'm still a little unsure of my wing, but I know that I'm self-pres and social. I'm on the East Coast in the USA. I'm in biotech, and typology is a hobby for me.
Cool. And Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm an ISFJ 6 wing 5, and I'm in Ontario, Canada. I'm not severely into type, just a little bit. But my job right now is basically being a pet photographer, so that's a little bit about me.
It's very cool. And so everyone, ask questions in the live chat. We would love to answer. What type of questions do you have for SI DOMs? Feel free to comment in the side chat. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so my first question for you SI DOMs is, what is something SI DOM like that you did today? I guess like what exhibits your functions today?
I think for me, for me, go ahead, Michelle.
No, it's okay.
I was going to say my daughter's heading back home from Oklahoma, and so I'm getting things ready for her. So it's part of supporting my family.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. Yeah. Supporting the family, the ISFJ way.
Yeah, the only thing I can think about it today, like maintaining my studies in language learning. I don't have anything special about it. So.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And so our first question came in. Hello, as an SI DOM, what is your opinion of the cognitive function system theory? How is it specifically useful to you? I'd like to know the difference between SIFE and SITE process. Yeah. And so Jordan, would you like to give us your thoughts?
Sure. I am super enthusiastic about the cognitive function theory. I use it in my coaching all the time and in my daily life, and it's fun to analyze the individual functions as well as their pairings. I also am super fascinated by, like say, objective personalities' take on the feminine masculine representations of the functions. Like I, for instance, have a feminine FE and a masculine SI. So I find myself quite different than other ISFJs. I don't have a lot of those more homey characteristics. I don't particularly care for baking and cooking and those type of domestic, predominantly female things, but I am very intellectually driven, researching, studying topics, and applying them to my family and my tribe. So that's how my feminine FE kind of plays into that. I see FE and TE pairing with SI as in the sense of this SI enjoys the synchronicity of things, and it's about collecting information in its own way for TE and FE. TE being more actionable data, and FE being more about data that relates to the people that are most important. It's not like always a huge group of people, but usually a very more of a compact group of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think the theory is very useful. My main motivation to keep studying it is more about seeing the functions as tools that I can use, not necessarily about like using it to understand other people. That's a lateral consequence. I see more as my improving my abilities to understand things. How I see the difference is for the users in SIFE and SITE. I think that the concreteness of the things, I tend to relate more the usefulness, not as a demonstration of what I feel generally. I tend to see feelings more like potential. It's more to combine it with the intuition.
That makes a lot of sense. Anyone else? Yeah, Rob.
Yeah, for me, I use it to figure out how to best support my friends. And we've had this discussion before, that if I understand what their needs are through cognitive functions, I can understand how to direct my energy towards that.
Yeah, that's true for me as well. When I started reading about cognitive function theory, it made sense how I process information in order to make people feel taken care of or feel better in order to attend to their needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is going exactly the way we thought it would before we started. So basically, SI DOMs, they're really polite and they're like giving each other a turn to talk. But then when you keep doing that, then no one talks because then you're all trying to give each other a turn. And so, yeah, anyone else before we move on?
I'll chime in. So I agree, or I relate to using it largely as focused on other people. Like I find myself a lot of the times, like it just helps me kind of hold space for why people might do things or see things differently than I do. And even in a lot of situations, I find myself like someone will be like saying like, oh, like this person's doing this, or like they're so this way and I just don't get why. And I'm like, like it's not like their fault. Like it makes sense. Some people just kind of do things this way or see the world this way. And I don't know, I think it's actually really helped me to like just really kind of understand people on an even deeper level, and it's contributed a lot to deepening my relationships with people. Of course, I like kind of understanding more why I do the things that I do with it, but my use is largely focused on others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was really well said. And Michelle?
Oh, I'm not 100% sure about SIFE to SIT, but the cognitive functions in general, like everyone else was saying, it helps me understand other people's needs more and my differences with them, with how different functions think and process, and even how they react to me in certain ways I react and everything. It helps me understand to know like how they process information and everything, how they react to situations differently than me. So
Yeah. Type is amazing at putting terms to the human experience and taking things less personally, because if you know someone did it because of their cognitive wiring, then it gives you more grace in interpreting their action. Yes. And so what types do you think is easy to get along with, and which types do you tend to struggle to get along with?
Well, in my case, I think it's easier to deal with IPs. I don't know why, but generally IPs, I feel very comfortable with them. And especially with INFPs, like I feel that we kind of understand each other. They're different, but like they're a bit the same. While in the struggle, it depends. Sometimes I can feel more conflict with ENFJs or ESTPs. ENFJs are very caring, and sometimes I don't want to receive that, and they are trying to give the most. So not always is what I want. So that's possibly a conflict that can be generated.
Mm. Yeah. How about you, Roger?
I mean, when it comes to struggle, I do see that, at least for me personally, I'm curious for the others, that I struggle a lot with TE DOMs. So namely like INTJ, ESTJ, those are the ones that I tend to struggle connecting with and talking with. For me, I don't think ISTJ is much of an issue. My dad is an ISTJ. We get along very well. That SJ connection really helps out. But just somehow for like ENTJ, INTJ, just it's really difficult to get on the same wavelength. We have such different priorities, such different ways of thinking. It's difficult to connect with. In terms of types that I got along with easily, I think the ones that I personally know very well, I know so many ENFPs. I'm very used to ENFPs at this point. Really nice people, really fun. And the INFJs that I've been just so awesome. Have been really cool. I feel that FE connection. I feel like we have that kind of same wavelength when it comes to feelings. So yeah, I think for me personally, ENFPs and INFJs, I got along with really well.
Cool. How about you, Jordan?
I think for me, it's more about the individual rather than the type, because everybody's in a different place of growth, and each type can present differently than someone else of a similar type. I would say as far as cognitive functions, FI higher in the stack is a little bit more difficult to kind of adapt to a more subjective view, especially when you're trying to get a group all motivated and doing the same thing, going in the same direction. That can be a little bit more difficult, but I would agree that ENTJ is probably the hardest.
Cool. Anyone else want to answer this question before we move on? Sure, Michelle?
I tend to gravitate a lot towards ENFPs, same as Roger. I don't know what it is about them, if it's the NE is their dominant function, and it's just like, I see how they use it maybe, and it's like oh my god, like the way they see the world, the way they react and everything, and maybe it's because I have that as an inferior function, and I have like a negative experience with it a lot, I find. I don't know if that's why I'm attracted to that type a lot. That most for friendships and stuff. And then also other ISFJs, because when I talk to them, it's like I feel understood a lot. And then for types I struggle with a lot, NTs, except for INTPs, I get along well with a lot of INTPs. But like the other T's, TJs, and I tend to clash with a little bit.
Interesting. And so have you ever experienced an NE grip? What does it feel like?
Well, it feels terrible. Just to initiate it. Like any grip is more like you're afraid that state that anything can happen, even the worst possibility that you can't even imagine. So it's more like being completely vulnerable and open to how the world can work against you is very complicated.
Yeah. It's like a fear of the unknown, and then generating multiple possibilities of what could happen from that. Yeah.
So I've been through therapy on that for cognitive behavioral therapy, and it did take some time to realize that you need to look at the most likely outcome of things as opposed to the worst possible scenario. And I think a lot of people that I speak with have this problem, and it's something you need to work through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Agreed. Anyone else? Danna?
To be honest, I didn't know that this is a type thing, but it has always felt like this. I thought it was a way for me to manage disappointment growing up. I tend to analyze situations and expect like the worst possible outcome, so that when it comes, it's not gonna slap me in the face that much. Like I'm prepared. So I think I've become better in handling this in a way that I feel like whatever outcome it's going to be, I'm gonna have to deal with it. So I don't have to focus so much on the bad ones. It's a work in progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Roger, I see you nodding very hard to that. In what way do you relate?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to that, we're just catastrophizing. We're thinking of the worst possibilities. And the very annoying thing is that we start to believe like almost like we're right. Like, no, of course, we're thinking of all these possibilities to get us prepared to expect the worst, but it really just makes us so incredibly closed-minded that we don't tend to see the light at the end of the tunnel. We don't see any other option. We just see all these negative possibilities and nothing else. So yeah, I totally completely relate to what she was saying.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And anyone want to add to this before we move to the next question?
I'll add to it a little bit.
For sure.
I find too with that, because I'm also in therapy kind of for this, whether it's like when we're in this thing, it's like we're thinking, what if this happens? What if this happens? And it branches out, and when we talk to like a therapist or someone else with a different point of view, it's like they'll tell us that we're not logic in our thinking for that, whereas it could feel like, to us, it could feel like it's logic. It feels like, oh, that feels logical to me, that feels logical to me. Whereas from a therapist and that, it's like, no, this is why you're not thinking logically in this grip. So I think that's a hard thing for me to deal with. It's trying to think logically and more realistically, whereas I don't feel like that at the time when I'm thinking all these what if scenarios.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And Jordan, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to comment, and in the sense of any is natural storytelling, and sometimes we can get caught up in like all of these narratives of the worst case scenarios and allow our minds to kind of follow that storyline into a state of panic. And I notice for myself, when I get in those states, I almost become even more rigid with whatever systems I already have in place, a little bit more controlling. And maybe that lends to my Enneagram 1 need for that like security and those boundary lines when I feel like everything is just completely out of control, way too many options, analysis paralysis kind of situation. You almost become even more buckled down on the things that you know and are comfortable and familiar with, making you present to be much more rigid and closed-minded.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. Yeah, and Jane?
I guess I feel like this probably happens so often that it's kind of hard to even like think of it as like specific events. Because at first, I think I was having a hard time pinpointing when it even happened to me. But then everyone was just talking about like the what ifs, and I'm like, oh, I do that like every day. But I feel like it might be partly because I'm a sick, but I mainly think of like there will be certain things that happen to me. Usually it's like a new situation, whether it's pretty small or significant, and I'll get very like overwhelmed with this sense of like, oh, like this is gonna be so bad, like I can't do this, and then I'll like be freaking out, and I don't know, but I get past it one way or another. But I feel like that's how it manifests a lot for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And you have that quote to deal with it as well. Like you've been through 100% of your bad days, so you can be ready for your other days. And so the next question, what's your relationship with high NE users?
I can definitely go. I super love NE. Even though it is my weakest function and everything, but I think being surrounded by ENFPs, INFPs that I've known, I feel like it just helps balance it out. Like rather than just seeing one way, ENFP comes and it's like, oh, there's other possibilities. You don't know. There's so many other things, and it helps brighten my perspective, broaden my horizons, and even with just random things. Like I can be so stuck in my own SJ way of doing something, but I can come in an ENFP and say like, oh, why are you doing it this way? Why not this way? Or maybe there's some other way that you can do the same thing you've been doing, and to me, it's just fun. It's just like a really fun function for me. It's just that by myself, it's pretty negative.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the beginning, I felt curiosity before I got to know more about MBTI. At college, I didn't knew profoundly MBTI, and I had an ENTP colleague, and I felt that I needed to be friend with him, and I learned a lot with him about NE, even though not knowing necessarily what NE was. But now I can see them as sort of teachers. Like I can understand better what NE is when I am with them, and it feels very comfortable and is a good opportunity to grow. So I really appreciate to be with high NE users.
Yeah. Anyone else?
It's great that he mentioned them being teachers, because I always feel like I'm a student when I'm hanging out with IN users. I feel my what I lack somehow magnified when I'm with them, but in a good way, because for me, I'm I know I am not really good at this part, so I'm picking up things from them along the way. So I just find it fascinating that he mentioned the teacher part when I was thinking I'm a student all along. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else? Jordan?
I am blessed with 2 NE-Dom kiddos, and they definitely bring out the more free flow, just overall exuberant side of being a mom, where I think SI can kind of almost weigh that down with routine and structure and trying to create responsible little human beings out of them. And they're both so incredibly positive and optimistic and enthusiastic about anything and everything. I have an ENTP and an ENFP both, and my ENTP is always coming up with creative solutions to solve problems and inventions and beautiful storytelling. I love it. It's great.
Yeah. That is quite lovely. And so have you ever thought of using the other judging function because of what society's gender standards are? So I guess this goes for the male ISFJs, and possibly, do you feel like you're forced to use TE more, even though your natural impulse is to use FE because of society? I think that's what they're asking.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was more of an issue before, but right. I mean, the whole concept that men can't get emotional, men shouldn't have feelings, and even trying to care about other people was shunned as well. People responded better with me being more serious, with me being more, basically, yeah, more of like an STJ. Just like I have a job, I have work. Let me just do this as efficiently as possible. Shut up and just do what I need to do. Yeah, I think at times I've had to utilize that, but thankfully now it's not so much of an issue anymore. I guess with things changing now, things are becoming better now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Rob, do you feel like the world makes you more thinkery?
Interesting way of putting it. So I think for me, sometimes I do put a lot of feeling into things, but to balance that out, sometimes I have to I have to move this forward. So I'm not going to have the perfect solution. So that's where my extroverted thinking kicks in and says, you know what, I just need to make a decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really interesting. And so the next question is, what kind of fears do SI DOMs carry, and do you all have similar fears? So name any fear, I guess. The weirdest.
Yeah. Oh,
Chaos.
I think we already talked about. Yeah, I agree. Chaos is definitely one of them. I think one we've already touched on was the fear of the unknown. Is that
Like,
just coming in?
With SC, like, we have sort of chaos, but like I feel secure that I'll be able to handle it. When it comes to intuition, like, things change.
Yeah. How about like strange fears you have? Just idiosyncratic fears that only you have. I don't know.
Well, this kind of goes along with the fear of the unknown, but I hate the idea of space. I'm super fascinated studying space and the planets and the solar system in general, but very into astronomy. But I hate the idea of space and water. And it's really weird because a lot of my coaching, I don't know, a lot of my coaching analogies have to do with water. Maybe that's my any inferior kind of being brought to the forefront in like a bold kind of way. But I hate the idea of water and space.
So same here. Definitely a fear of water. For the life of me, I can't swim even after professional coaching, and also a fear of height. I love to hike, but if it's on a sheer cliff, I literally turn pale white.
Fear of certain animals like reptiles, amphibians. I can't touch them. They just feel weird. And also like with the water, the idea of not having like sand or any ground to for my feet to latch on to when I don't know how to swim. So even in a country where there are a lot of beaches, whenever I go, I just stay in the shallow part.
Yeah. So it's like a fear of drowning.
Yes.
And Roger?
Thankfully not scared of the water because I was a lifeguard for quite a while, so I teach people how to swim and super comfortable with the water, super love the water. So thankfully that's not it for me. But yeah, definitely what Rob was saying. I mean, I think that fear of the unknown, the future, because I have been in many situations where I would plan something out. I would try to even capture the unexpected. I would do my best to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan whatever, and really try my hardest to make sure that I can predict what will happen. But when everything just comes crashing down and completely does you sideways, it's so difficult to get out of. And yeah, for me, it's happened multiple times. I think that for me has definitely been a huge fear of mine.
Does anyone else want to share their fears? Yeah.
Okay. So I guess this might get really hard hitting really fast, but I think it's actually very related to being SINE. So one of my greatest fears is essentially getting to the end of my life feeling like I never truly lived. And I think that it's really relevant because if I just let my inferior any hold me back from trying like all the things that I really want to try just because they're a little bit scary, then I feel like that would be an easy way to fall into that circumstance. And I'm always kind of conscious of that. Like, I don't want to regret like all these things I didn't do.
Yeah. Great way of putting it. That's a really big life lesson for people as well. Anyone watching this, live your life, go out, do the thing you love. I mean, I know we're in a situation where that's kind of hard, but, in general, do the things that bring you joy because you only have so much time. So might as well live it to its fullest. Yeah. And Michelle, you had your hand raised?
Oh, I didn't, but I'm gonna talk anyway. My fears tend to go to death a lot, so a lot of my fears I find that they're rooted in I'm just strongly afraid of death. So I've never actually swam or anything, so I can't swim or anything. So I don't know if I actually do have a fear of water, but I know when I'm near it, like there is the fear of like falling in or drowning and then dying. So all my fears kind of end up rooted to death at the end. So that's a big, strong fear for me.
Yeah. It's like fearing the unpredictable elements that the water brings with it. Yeah. And so, Samuel, you haven't answered.
Well, fears. I have some fears. That's kind of weird, but like things that cannot be changed, like a decision that will be forever and ever. I know that's common to be thought to an IJ, but sometimes it's quite gets me worried.
Yeah, it can be scary when you you make a decision and you have to live with the consequences for life. Yeah, you want those consequences to be good consequences. Yeah. And so the next question, SI DOMs build habits over time, and by repetition and updating, they reach a point of mastery. What habits do you feel like you've mastered over the years?
Well, I don't feel that I mastered anything, but I'm trying to get better at communication. It was a problem that I had. I think in my case, especially related to NE, because the way the said language is very linked to NE. And now I'm trying to like speak other languages, and I don't know, like keep making some exercises. I think that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Anyone else want to answer?
I think
yeah.
for go ahead. Go ahead.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, just I think same. I mean, I might be too young. I don't feel like I've necessarily reached the point of mastery yet. And the funny thing is that we can build habits over time and repetition and all that. But if anything, that the situation that we're living in now, those habits can come crashing down, and we have to readapt and relearn. So I'm not sure if necessarily there is a way of mastery, because life changes, things happen, things change. So even those habits have to change too sometimes. I mean, if there is one thing, at least for the sake of the question, I guess it would have to be swimming, because swimming I've done all my life, still continue to do. That's the number one thing that I continue to do. But yeah, if I had to answer the question, it would be swimming.
I was going to say, for me, I'm a lifelong learner, and so I'm always learning something new. I'm not sure if I have mastered a particular habit, but there are some things that I like to focus on, and one is my health. So I do work out every day. I do grow a lot of my own food, and I think that in terms of where I'm at in my life, my health is very important to me. So that's a focus of mine.
Yeah. How about you, Jordan?
I would have to agree with everyone else so far. It's really hard to say you've mastered anything. I mean, I think we can excel in different topics and themes and interests. I'm a huge theology nut, so I can get down a rabbit trail for a really, really long time until I feel like I've become contented with that topic, and then move on to something else. But I definitely tend to be one track minded when I am learning something, whether it's a skill or something else. I'm a skilled needle worker. I feel like I've spent a lot of years, I guess, perfecting that craft, literally. Keep 5 kiddos alive. I've become a master at that.
That is quite the feat.
I have to agree with the rest that I wouldn't call myself having mastered this certain skill, but over time it became sort of natural for me, and that is cooking. Like I can make something for the first time and not mess it up just by watching instructional videos on YouTube.
Yeah. Anyone else want to share? So For me, what I want to master is typology. So I thought I'd answer that question too. Well, everyone knows that. That's and so what is SI? How do you use it? My earpiece just fell out.
Well, I was thinking about it yesterday. I was thinking that the concept of nature is a good representation of SI, like that things have a nature, something constant about their constitution. And SI is what recognizes that and knows that exists and how it is. But the use, like, is my dominant function, so it's kind of everything. I'll say that it's basically to how I can understand that nature to build my life on it and keep improving.
Yeah, Rob.
So for me, it's a catalog of experiences. So I think of my mind as my internal world. It's like a giant library, and I can fall back on my experiences, and I have those cataloged in different categories in my mind, and I can pull those up as needed. So those could be those are things that happen throughout my long life, and I can pull up and compare and contrast and apply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else want to add? For sure. Oh yeah, Jordan.
I would definitely say that it's a skill for synchronicity. It looks for balance in the external environment to internalize and constantly scanning for comparisons and contrasts, and how to apply it, either TE or FE, whichever direction it's going to move. I really like what's already been said, especially about categorizing experiences. Rob, you referred to it as a library. I often refer to it as like a filing cabinet where you can just quickly go through the files. I think most SI people, at least this is what I've heard, have a sort of photographic memory. So a lot of things are replayed visually in our mind per that experience. And using NE, we can go back through that experience and find new information that we maybe didn't see before and build on that moving forward. I think that it's always, like I said, looking for kind of an incongruency in the outer world, trying to make things measure back up and be rebalanced. And I like what was already said about it being referred to in nature. It's definitely got this symmetrical quality to it, like I said, with balance. And in nature, we see everything in nature just being very symmetrical, in that sense, high contrast, that sort of thing.
Yeah. That's a really great point, Jordan, about how it goes back on memories and it replays it and relives it to a certain extent. Like it has that ability. And so you mentioned synchronicity. Could you go more into that?
Yeah, like we're always looking for sameness, and that's why we're known as being very repetitive. We're looking for things to align and match, I guess, for lack of a better term. So when we notice that something's not matching, we automatically categorize it as being different. And so any kind of can be afraid of different, especially in the inferior function. So I think that's where you have to move into a place of growth in being able to recognize that thing being out of sync and not seeing it as a threat necessarily, but a way, like how can you creatively bring everything back into sync? So like I said, we're always scanning for that synchronicity, that balance, that mutuality in the world.
Yeah. It's looking for that homeostasis, like that point where everything works. I mean, it goes well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And as an SI Dom, do you have an intense fear of being unproductive?
Me?
Well,
Yes.
go on.
I measured like the days worth based on how much productive stuff I have done. So like during the bad days, I really feel even worse afterwards when I contemplate about how I spent the day. I feel like it doesn't have to be like a great achievement, but at least like doing your laundry or finishing a work task or like a favor for someone, at least something productive, like just to make sure I didn't waste the day away.
Well, what
It's
I see
interesting.
as oh, you continue.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I would say that it's not in my case not necessarily a fear because I'm in control when I'm being productive or not. It's more that I don't want to be unproductive. So I keep measuring how much time I'll need to spend to keep being productive. So it's more like deciding when to be and when not.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I keep two whiteboards. One's for personal things and one's for work things to keep track of what I'm working on. And usually there's 15 or 16 different items on there that are things that I want to do. So there's always something for me to do, whether it be things on my house or with my family or on the work side of projects I'm working on. And I think I put more pressure on myself than others put on me. So it's kind of internally driven. I've been referred to in the past as it's called an overachiever, but also as I put a lot of pressure on myself to do that. There was a time where I was working full time. I went back to graduate school, as well as having personal projects. So it's like doing the impossible. I'm, like working 3 jobs. And so I think that's just something that we have to learn how to manage. I don't know that I call it intense fear. But it does definitely cause some internal anxiety. And that's something that we as ISFJs have to learn how to manage.
Yeah. I noticed this theme of anxiety with the ISFJs. Like I hear a lot of talk. That's why like a lot of ISFJs tend to type S6 in the Enneagram because that type is trending with anxiety. So a type that mentions anxiety a lot, it seems to be the ISFJs. Yeah. And so Roger?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have any kind of intense fear whatsoever. I feel like I'm a strong believer that in however I myself spend my time, it's something that I think in some way or another is something that's needed. So, like, just a quick example, like if I realize that I maybe spent my entire day like in bed or something, I could see it as unproductive, like I did literally nothing, but stopping and thinking for a second and realizing like maybe that's just what my body needed. Maybe I really needed that rest. I had a really tough day or a really tough week, and this is what I need to take care of myself. Then whatever it is that you do can be seen as productive. So for me, I just shift my perspective, and whatever it is that I do, I know that it's productive in some way or another. Or like even labeling as like today's the rest day, maybe it might feel like I'm not doing anything, but I know that I can catch up and I know that I can get back to work the next day.
Yeah, there's a lot of self-compassion in that view, Roger. So yeah, you've really reached the heights of self-compassion, and that's amazing. Yeah. Anyone else want to answer this question? Yep, Jordan.
I really love what you said, Roger. That was beautiful. And I definitely resonate with that. As I have in that like internal sense of like what's needed for our bodies, like internally. So I can concur with that. But I definitely think that the drive for productiveness lends more towards TE. I feel like for FE, it tends to be more about like, what have I done that's lasting for our tribe or the people that we're responsible for? So it's this drive to be responsible and a need to meet needs for other people. So if I haven't done that, then yeah, I can be pretty hard on myself. And I think it also, like you were saying, Joyce, it lends a little bit to our Enneagram type. As a 1, I know that this sense of duty is like an overarching theme for me every single day. So it's less about productivity and what did or didn't get done as far as housework or meeting goals or things like that. It's more about, did my kids learn anything today? Did they get to play outside enough? Did they did I spend enough quality time with them? Did they feel like their emotional needs were met? So it's that sort of productivity for me personally.
Yes. Like it's a motherly form of productivity, like the most productive mom. Yeah. And so how do ISFJs understand TE, and how do the ISTJs understand FE?
Well, to start, I would say that I see FE as a necessary part of society in that they are able to see that values emerge like in reality. It doesn't need it to be necessarily from your own story, but how people face each other is enough to build values that keep people together. Is how I see like FE values are objective, not necessarily just my own.
Yeah. Rob?
So as an ISFJ, I see TE, the extroverted thinking, as the primary way that how SITEs interact with the world around them. So that's how they love efficiency and how to get things done, and they can enjoy some healthy competition at times.
Roger?
I mean, maybe for me personally, my experiences with T have been quite negative. Thankfully, I do have a best friend who is an ESTJ, and I think it just took him a little bit to mature and to get to the place where he is now. But I know that it was such a struggle because every time I would feel like no matter what I did, what I said, it's always wrong. There's always a better way. Like, your way is stupid. Do this instead. Do this. Do that. And I felt like I could just never have my own voice or have my own say. And then there's also the, what's it called? Like, when they give you the advice, they tell you what things are when you never asked for it anyway. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, why wouldn't you want me to tell you what's a better way of doing this? Why wouldn't you want me to correct you? Like, that's what I would want myself. Like, of course. And it's such a different way of thinking. So that's those are just some things that I've noticed.
Absolutely. And Jordan?
Having to look at them through the lens of polarities, it's really a differentiation between values versus ethics, or morals versus ethics. They're both system thinkers. FE is more about the collective emotionally, taking into account each individual. TE tends to be more about the individual integrating into the collective. So TE definitely be more focused on the system, taking out the personal element, and FE being more about adding in the personal element to fit the system, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Anyone else want to answer before we switch? Yeah, Jane.
I guess I'll just say that while, of course, there could be times when TE can come off as like too direct or kind of like blunt, I guess. I really do admire the use of the function, and I think that I really wish that I could be better at it, because like where I get stuck in like analysis paralysis a lot of the times, then like TE users are really good at just saying like, okay, like just do this, or I don't know. I just wish that I was a lot better at that. So I think there's a lot to be learned from them, even if it could be kind of hard sometimes.
Yes. And so where are you good at? Are you good at using your auxiliary function? How were you with your auxiliary function when you were younger? Is it something you developed when you were in your 20s? Anyone?
Well, nothing specifically. What I remember when I was developing my TE, like my teenagers, that period, is that I couldn't see the importance of feeling. Like, I was literally like being wrongly proud of myself of being rational, and only after I was able to see the value of feeling like when I'm on my 19, 18 almost. But something that I could see the result of my TE, I don't remember anything specifically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to feeling with the FE, I don't think I was cognizant of it when I was younger, but just my whole way of being, my focus has always been other people, trying to help other people, and realizing that even all the way up to college, like people would ask me for advice or people would want to tell me their problems and I would just listen. It's something that I didn't notice and didn't really understand it very well when I was younger. Of course, now with MBTI and everything, it's something that I want to continue building, want to continue developing and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Jordan, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I think just from my own observation, as the functions progress through age, we tend to focus much more on our tertiary as we were younger. So I was definitely more TI focused growing up, where FE was definitely more passive in the sense of people pleasing. And in my, I would say late 20s, early 30s is when I began to pay attention to that and learn the value of boundaries, where before there was no such thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. And so do you judge others when they're not dutiful or responsible? Oh, okay.
Well, generally yes, but if I see a reason why they are doing that, I'll be more patient with them. But if the person is not responsible just because they don't want to, then I'll be judgmental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so this question is, where do you think the responsibleness of the SJs come from? Like, where does that responsibility come from?
Well, we know that because like SI deals with the concrete world and is introverted, so it's not attached to the present moment. It's like an ideal form of the concreteness. So once that our main concern is about that, we'll try to preserve that, and those things naturally will tend to be mixed with our duties. So we understand the importance of duties because we understand why they exist, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like you know why it's important to keep the sensory in order. Like, yeah, what consequences will follow if you don't. Yeah. And so what SI Dom stereotypes do you want to break? Or do you see a lot in the community? Jordan?
There seems to be a little bit of a resistance to accepting SI DOMs in the type community. It definitely sometimes can feel like there's an elitist mindset behind the intuitive part of the community. And so definitely debunking the myths that sensors don't really have a lot of value to add to type. But I think that with our collection of being able to observe comparisons and contrasting elements of the types and the functions, I think we bring a lot of grounding qualities, especially in a profiling situation. We tend to stay very grounded and realistic about what we're actually seeing versus speculating on what this person could be talking about, what they could be meaning. So I think we bring a grounding element to society in general, but also on a different note, breaking this idea that SIs are very rigid and closed-minded. Because I think when we allow ourselves to grow and we allow ourselves to use NE in a productive way, we can actually be very open, accepting of each individual experience. Because again, we're collecting data from the external environment to see how we should proceed in our interactions with people. So taking into account the individual element, we can better communicate, better understand that person's experience.
Well, what I see is that a lot of times, SI in general is described as the lack of intuition. Like, people complain that we don't see the meaning of things, but we are not attaining necessarily our actions to meanings. You are working to other things, and we have reasons to do those things. But a lot of times it's perceived that you're afraid of like changes, but we have some reasons why we behave sometimes. What I see is very frequent is that some people, like, they had bad experiences with some maybe SJs, and they were not see like the place of the other person, and they are attaching that the other person is ignorant or is just boring. Like, you are dealing with other things that you probably don't care, but someone needs to care about those things.
Very true.
Yeah, Rob.
So I read in some places that we're not creative, but I'm here to confirm that we are very creative, that we're not robots, we're not boring. We do have a lot of interests that across a lot of different areas. So for me, I paint, and I find myself creative in using that in the work I do and things for my personal life.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the same thing. When I was new to the type community, I saw comments that SI DOMs are not creative, but we are in our own special way. I also paint and draw, and for me, even cooking is an art, so because you create something, you mix things to make delicious food. So there are many ways to be creative. So
Yeah, and Jane?
I agree with pretty much everything everyone is saying. Like, I definitely wish that the stereotype of us being like rigid and boring wouldn't persist so much. And like the stereotype that we're just, I don't know, like drones to like carry out certain tasks. Because there's a lot more to us than just like maintenance. Like if we're comfortable, then we could be really open. And like people are saying, we could be very creative. We could have various interests. Like I hate the stereotypes in general of like sensors not being as smart and stuff. I just, yeah, I was gonna say something else, but I lost it. So, oh, okay, I remember now. Also, it's not bad to like appreciate things that seem ordinary, because I mean, I think we're really good at seeing like what's so beautiful about little things. Because a lot of times it's the little things that are really the big things. And also, I need to bring in a quote from the Office finale. When Pam said, like, there's beauty in ordinary things, isn't that kind of the point? And I mean, like, if you're not going to appreciate like regular everyday life and the little things around you, then I mean, I don't know, like, what is your life really? How fulfilled are you going to be, basically?
Yeah. I love how you always end the things you talk about with a quote. Like, sometimes it's kind of like a mic drop at the end. Like, yeah, I'm done talking, mic drop.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I had to quote Pam.
It was amazing. I loved it.
Thanks.
Yeah. And Michelle, if you want.
Well, I don't have much new to add because everyone pretty much said what I agree with as well. But yeah, just the stereotype of us being boring and stuff like that. I don't like. I know that really affected me before when I was younger, and it still kind of affects me now. Like, I'm very like, oh my god, like when I make friends and stuff, now I'm like, oh my god, am I boring them? Or, oh my god, am I too quiet? Blah blah blah. So, I kind of prefer that stereotype to go away. People to see kind of that we are very creative and we do have a lot to say sometimes because we don't come across that way.
Yeah, that's so true. And so, what is your favorite thing about me?
I got this one. I think I find you amazing that you can pull together people from around the world on topics. And the groups of people that you bring together are just amazing to me. And I don't see this in other communities. That's why I'm mentioning it.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. What?
Jordan?
Oh, I'm sorry. You can go ahead.
Well, I would say that I admire what you're doing. I'm very honored to be here. I'm flattered because I know the work you're doing this on YouTube, and I really appreciate what you're doing. And the thing that I really appreciate about you is the insights that you think to yourself, and sometimes you let them appear a little bit, and then you come back. Those things are very, very shiny. I really appreciate when you do that. Things that you were thinking, you share with us. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you, Samuel. Jordan?
Yeah, I was going to say, which we just talked about this recently too, but I think that it's a beautiful example of NI and FE working together, bringing in the collective and hearing from each individual part of the collective for a bigger purpose, taking in the bigger picture of humanity, bringing this sort of flavor to the type community, having all of the different types and pairings of types get together and talk about all these things. And then I love how you will every now and then expound on what some person has said, and you pepper it with your beautiful, nuanced language.
Oh, I love that. Wow. I'm honored to be complimented right now. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, y'all. And so, what is your relationship with your trickster function?
Well, that's complicated. Well, I can say that I can see the importance of FE, but rationally, I still can't love it. I don't feel like FE with my heart. I just know FE with my mind, and it's something I'm trying to develop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jordan. I think you muted yourself.
Sorry, I must have been off mute. No, I always try to wait for everybody else, but then when there's an awkward silence, it's like, okay, do I jump in now? Do I wait? Being that I mentioned earlier, I have masculine T. I've been mistyped before as ISTJ. Also growing up with an ENTJ parent, I think that I've learned some of the tricks to the trickster. Pardon my pun. So I think that I can come off kind of skilled at TE in the way that I manage like my home and kind of get people moving. And I've found creative ways to bring incentives to get work done, which I think is a talent of TE. Make it very appealing to get motivated and be productive and get the stuff going.
Mm-hmm. Roger?
Well, when it comes to TE, I mean, generally speaking, if I don't know the person very well, yeah, it's a little bit hard to interact and everything. But like I mentioned before, one of my best friends is an ESTJ. We get along well, but he's matured. It took him a while to get there, but we get along just fine, and everything's really nice there. I really can appreciate the way that he thinks, the way that he's able to present things to me. So I've been able to reach a level of understanding and appreciation for what he is. I just unfortunately know so many other types that are in the same level of maturity as he is.
Yeah.
And when it comes to FE, I mean, the only person that I've ever met that was an ESFJ is my current girlfriend, and we got along really nicely, really great. I see a lot of similar issues, and in such a way, it's so interesting. But for me, it's just a really, really nice relationship. It really just clicks very well. No issues, no kind of complications.
Yeah. So it seems like with type 9s like Roger, sometimes when the question is about you, you'll accidentally interpret it as like, oh, I'm going to talk about people outside me. I notice type 9s like to focus on people who are not them. So I'm like, oh, interesting, Roger. And so Michelle, I saw you raise your hand.
I find with T doms, for me, it's like sometimes it's like they're hitting a sore spot for me when I interact with them sometimes, especially if I'm just meeting them or just getting used to them. Like I'm not used to that person or used to that function like coming right at me, and it's like it hits a sore spot, and then it's like it brings out my insecurities right away, and then that makes me react negatively. And so now, more so, what I try to do is I try to step back, and when I feel like these emotions, I'll reflect and be like, okay, why am I acting this way? Why is this hitting a spot for me? And try to like self-reflect now instead of just being like oversensitive and getting upset and being like, oh my god, why are you talking to me like that? Like that.
Definitely.
Mhm.
And so ISFJs, what are your hobbies, interests, skills that come from your TI? Jordan?
My audio might sound a little different. I had to take my Bluetooth out. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I am a huge theology nut. I love to constantly filter and question what I believe, what I think about what I believe, and not just about religion, but politics and current affairs and everything. I don't want to stay biased ever to a belief or one opinion. So I'm always filtering and always researching and always studying, and yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add? Yeah, Rob.
So for my TI, I'm always seeking out the truth about experiences and situations. So I love to travel. And when I retired a few years ago, I did a trip through Asia backpacking for 45 days. And I believe I took over 4,500 photos and videos. And it's because I wanted to catalog that. I wanted to have a record of that amazing trip and the people I met and the interesting places I saw, places that I wouldn't have imagined. So I think for me, I think it does have a role.
Yeah, and you were very planned for your travels, like extremely planned.
Exactly. I once planned a trip 6 months ahead with daily itineraries and T-shirts because I wanted to maximize the experience, not just myself, but for others.
Yeah, that's lovely. Anyone do any brain teasers, any mind puzzles? Yeah. Interesting. Oh, yeah. Jane, was that a yeah to the brain teasers, or you wanted to add more?
I was just gonna mention some hobbies. Quickly, I think, interestingly, ever since I was a little kid, I think like a lot of my interests were TI based. 'Cause, like I would go through different phases, and they were all kind of scientific. So like one, it was about like the anatomy of the human body. One was gems and minerals. Another one was outer space, and so on and so on. And I'm still like very interested in outer space, and also like evolutionary history. So I don't know, I've just like always had like very scientific interests, and it's so fascinating to me. Yeah.
Interesting. And so, hi there. Sorry, I was trying to read their handle. It's called Hello There. I'm an ENFP. What advice would you like to give us to better communicate with you guys? What things annoy you, and what do you wish we could do more?
Well, I think that, well, they have impure SI, so they'll focus on what's possible to do. That's very important. That's what they give to us and what they teach us. But what I think that's important is that when you are explaining the conditions, like the SI part of things, just listen. Does not try to ignore how things are, then I think it's better for us. Once you understand that you are respecting the SI, I don't know, okay, I can depend on you that you know what you're doing. So give attention to what you are saying. I think it's important. Even that you are in NFP and you are making that question, you're probably already doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else? Jordan?
NE is on the opposite end of the movement scale from SI. And so for SI inferior, it can be really hard for them to slow down and appreciate that level of movement. So extending the amount of time and being patient with our process because it is much slower. And also holding space for the FETI element that we have, because we are trying to take in all of the individual information and apply it to the group or the collective or even just the dynamic of the two, and trying to figure out what's best for everybody, as opposed to the subjective view where it's very quick moving for the individual, like let's do this thing, let's go this way. So sometimes the FE person can get left behind in that, especially because we're slower with SI.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to add? Going once, going twice. Next question. I'm really curious about your experiences with schools, with the school system. What do you feel? Do you feel your functions have helped with it?
As a lifelong learner, I think my introverted thinking has helped because I can analyze, in science especially, because I can analyze the situation, categorize it, and evaluate it according to principles. I'm wondering if my past experiences, looking at my introverted sensing, I do compare and contrast my past experience with courses, and I also use my extroverted feeling because I do reach out and connect with other students. So up until last December, I mentored over 150 students over the last 3 years. And it's because I wanted to connect with others and help them in their careers. So I think those are some of the functions that relate to what I do.
Well, I don't know if SI helped, especially with the school system. But the only thing that I noticed is that when I am in college now, is that I feel that college is very heavy TI, and sometimes I feel that TI is required, especially some IMTPs can make me feel that I know nothing about this subject. But I don't know, because when I see SI is not about remembering things, it's about understanding the complete part of things. So once I understand what's being said, I will remember it easily. Most of my time I spent learning was not like reading. It's about hearing what the professor was saying and creating the model in my mind. So once I understood that model, I was making my mind, then I could remember the lesson.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to share? 3, 2. Okay, Jordan.
My opinion on the current school system, and actually the way it's been done for a while, is elementary is very SJ oriented, and middle and high school is definitely more EP oriented. And I feel like that's a bit backwards. I feel like the fundamental and formative ages should definitely be more free flow, more expressive, more creative, less rigid. And the upper grades should have more stability, teaching them how to integrate into society with balancing checkbooks and managing finances and work and business and life skills like that. So for me choosing to homeschool right out the gate, my kids have never been to public school. It took a lot of NE. I was definitely very scholarly in school, but having to be more creative and adaptive with my 5 different types of children, I have all different types. It definitely pushes on my NE to be more creative, more adaptable, more open to listening to their feedback and trying to learn what their needs are and how their learning styles are different. I wish that that's how it was more in public school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very interesting. Agreed. And also, I'm noticing like the silence in between the questions and in between the answering. And I noticed that perhaps it's because of the SI precedence. Like, there's no past experience to base what the etiquette for a live video is. So it's like, how do I conduct myself? What do I do? Because there's no SI to really fall back on. So everyone's being extra cautious with how they're conducting themselves. So what animal do you think best represents ISFJs or ISTJs?
I'm just gonna jump in here.
Michelle?
For me, I think ISFJs, especially the ones I've met as well, maybe like a deer or a mouse almost. A deer specifically because it's like we're cautious and sometimes with myself especially, any like change in atmosphere, whatever, and it's like it's run off there like a deer. So I feel like a deer would represent myself and other ISFJs.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Jane?
I was also thinking of deer for ISFJ, largely for what reasons that you said, Michelle. I agree with that. Also, like the thing about deer, it's even though they could seem very shy, and like they're always in the background and they could kind of fade away in that respect, they're always out there doing what they need to do. And I think that is very comparable to ISFJs.
This is so fascinating. So this question was asked to the ENFP panel as well, and they couldn't answer with a certain animal, so they would keep fighting because FI is so individualistic. It's like, no, I know the animal. It's different from your animal because FI wants like a special animal. I don't know, because FI is so particular with how it sees its own identity that's different from everyone else. And with the FE users, it's like, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you too. It's so weird. Yeah, and Rob?
I was going to say, while I agree with you, another animal is the penguin because they're loyal, protective, intelligent, and they have a lot of social ability. So if you look at how they interact with each other as I guess we'd say a flock, they are very social.
Mm-hmm.
I like that, Rob, because I feel like as a male ISFJ, penguin males are very domesticated. And so I think that's a great pick for an ISFJ male. It's great. I would personally have to say for myself, an elephant. Impeccable memory, very tribe-oriented, social, and I'm an Enneagram social orientation, so I feel like I do better in tribe settings than more isolated. They're very motherly, nurturing, that sort of thing.
Excellent. Does anyone else want to flex their NE and give this an answer?
Well, I would say that unfortunately I didn't thought about like the animals. I heard that ant for ISTJs. I think it makes sense, but I'll need to spend more time thinking about it. But when it comes to like something to represent, not necessarily ISTJs, but I think four of the four elements, like the earth gives a good notion of what I think SI is and what it is to be an ISTJ.
How about you, Roger?
I mean, I have to say, like, I really love Rob's penguin. I think that's the one. I haven't really thought much of any other kind of animal either, but I think penguin just hits the nail there for me too.
Wow, this is so nice. It's when I ask like a question that has to do with identity to a group of FI users, what ends up happening is a bomb field, and then they just keep going like no to each other. And then with the FE users, it's like, yeah, I can see where you're coming from. How about you, Danna?
I actually thought of the deer as well, but then for some reason, like a cat keeps coming into my head. Maybe because it's my favorite animal, but also like I feel like unlike dogs, cats take time for their trust to be gained. And like I think ISFJs in a way are kind of like that. Like you have to build your reputation as someone reliable, like series of like repetitive actions, like proving that you're really like this. So before we can trust you, I feel like we're sociable people, but we're very cautious about who we let in to our lives because we're also, as much as we are sociable, we're very reserved and private. So
Yeah. It's like Brene Brown, she has the concept of a trust jar. And so you have to keep putting things into the trust jar for the trust to grow. You don't get that trust overnight. You kind of have to earn it. So yeah, that's really nice. And so what is your preferred communication style?
like calling or texting? Is it no?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, I find it weird. I think most of the introverts are averse to calling, but I do like calling. I think it's efficient. I can multitask. I can do a lot of things. I can have more meaningful conversations with people as opposed to texting or chatting. I'm no good at chatting for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I would need more context around this question.
Yeah, so I guess, how about, do you prefer writing? Do you prefer emailing, calling?
It depends. For me, it depends on the situation and the size of the group I'm communicating with. I used to have a email list in my work where I was communicating with 90,000 people. So that's a very different communication style that was needed for that kind of instance versus a smaller group or a single person. I think for me as a former manager, I liked one-on-ones. I like talking to everyone as an individual and understanding who they are. And that was something I became known for. And I also say management by walking around. I wanted to see what people were doing and what they're working on, and they were excited, and I was excited too about that. So I think I like to know a group as a culture, or a group as is social norms, but I also like to know individuals as people.
Yeah, yeah. Feelers tend to have a really big personal element to them, like personable, being able to like really work their way with people. Yeah. And as an SI Dom, how do you flex your NE and when you need to?
Well, my case is a constant work. Like I'm not doing anything specifically, but when I face like anything or any situation, after I try to understand like my way, I'll start to think like how could I understand this through the lens of any, because I really don't think that doing something specifically would help you to really develop your internal function, because it's there to help you to understand things. So I think that the better way to make your internal function grow is to try to use it to understand things.
Mm.
I think for me, sometimes I have a light bulb moment where the light bulb comes on and said, wow, this is really interesting. And it could be as I'm talking, a thought just pops into my head and I just start talking about that. So I might seem a little sidetracked when that happens.
I feel like SI is, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Roger.
Oh, was it me? Oh. Yeah, this question made me laugh because the first thought that came to my head was the only way to really flex my NE is when I'm surrounded by NE people. So if I have like an INFP or an ENFP, INTP with me, then I feel like that just unlocks all the potential for NE for me. So if I really want to engage in it, just have a nice conversation with like an INTP or INFP, ENFP, and I'll just be able to go nuts there.
Yes, so that's a good tip for any of the functions. If you want to develop any of your functions, hang out with people that use that function, and you will learn how to use it more through that. The best way to learn is to be surrounded by that function. Yes, and Jordan?
I was just going to say that since SI tends to be slower at adapting, but can be very adaptable over time, sometimes it can come in the form of you have a system in place for long enough, like a routine, and you realize something in that routine is not quite working for the collective. NE can be very helpful in being like, okay, let's scrap this, let's brainstorm, let's try to find other alternatives of what you need, or what will make this run smoother or get things done faster or whatever. Also in a pinch, I find NE very helpful if I need to adapt quickly. Say I'm trying to make a meal and I'm missing an ingredient, and he will somehow just pull something out of the bag and make it work. So it's just that ability to stretch yourself to be able to adapt.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to answer this question? Okay, 3, 2, 1, self-destruct. All right. So what does an SI-FI loop look like? Oh, wait, this is just for Samuel.
Yeah. Well, usually I see that people tend to describe a sci-fi working together as recalling bad memories. I think that that's possible, but I don't see these two functions being destructive. I see that given that both are introverted functions, both are somehow the same, not the same, but they are very similar. And like I was explaining before, that I saw the SI as understanding the nature. The SIFI would be like understanding who you are through your nature, and given your nature, like how your actions, they can not show, but be who you are, like without the context, without any other thing. What you're doing, what you do is really who you are and who you're being, who you want to be.
Can it sometimes manifest as like it is what it is? I am who I am.
Yeah, like that. Especially if it was in a conflict, like if someone is calling me out to do something I don't want, so they'll be both together. Though I know who I am, I know what I want, and I'm not doing that.
Yeah, interesting. And how about the SITI loop for you ISFJs? Anyone been through the loop recently? The pandemic's has it gotten you into a loop? Because the pandemic's getting everyone into a weird funk. So
Yeah, I was going to say that's a bit where the rigidity of ISFJs can come from, is being caught in that loop, because we are constantly overanalyzing and processing what we know. And with the pandemic and the elections and everything, the truth being so skewed on both sides, it's really hard to know what's viable. And SI really wants that viable, solid information to be able to categorize. And so I think we can get caught up in those loops when we feel like we don't have that, or if NE is kind of taking over with the variables, kind of like I said earlier, knuckling down and becoming more rigid, more introverted. I've also noticed that with the mask issue, not being able to read facial expressions has been really difficult for me, almost as a deterrent to interact socially. I can't see your face. I've had a hard time even recognizing people I know in the grocery store and things. and that presenting almost a resistance to social interacting, which has caused an SITI loop.
Yeah. For me, I could relate to what was just said with all the politics going on and other things going on in our world. And for me, one of my strategies is just to emotionally disconnect. Or in the case of the politics, I just shut off my social media for a few days and just walked away from it and focus on other things to distract myself. I think it's for me, it's about getting it out of my head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. And so are ISFJs good at small talk?
I feel like, well, for me, yeah, I'm good at small talk, but it doesn't mean I like it. Oh my gosh. I know so many people that like, do the small talk, do the whole thing, but it's like in the back of my head, I'm like, oh my God, how can I escape? How can I leave?
Yeah, escape.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody's texting me. I have to go.
Yeah, there you go.
I personally don't mind small talk. Sometimes I feel like things can get really weighty with more intellectual, theological, intuitive conversation, that sometimes there's got to be like a break in there to bring everything back down to a realistic state of being, where you can actually like have a real conversation with somebody about how they're feeling, what they're going through, what's going on in their life. Those small talk elements that kind of also open up deeper conversations sometimes.
Well,
Yeah.
I see that there's a value to small talk. Not that I like it, but I see that it can be useful sometimes. When I was like, I saw a study about language and grammar that there are like 6 functions to language, and one of them is to just keep people having the communication. Like sometimes with small talk, the aim is not what you're saying, but that you're saying something to someone, and then you can understand who they are or what is your relationship with that person. It's like a burden, but it has a function. I see it that way.
Yeah, I also think it helps to make people feel more comfortable with you when they feel like you care about them on like a really basic level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are some small talk questions? Maybe we're defining small talk a little differently then between each person. So, what is small talk to you?
Well, I don't know, like talking about the weather or what happened with your family, even if I don't know who you are, like I'm just facing you. Like here in Brazil, it's very, very common to meet that people to like to have small talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is very true. So high SI users are known for preservers of culture you belong to. As an SI Dom, what is your relationship to culture in general?
Well, I see that culture is an important thing. Like, is sometimes it gives you some that unites you with your uh, the people that came before you and the people that will come after you. So it gives like this structure that we can understand each other like in a simple way and avoid conflict and see things not only through the present but through the passage of time. Like things are greater than our timelines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The way I see it is in the present, that's our extroverted feeling. So we're trying to connect and consider others in the group that we're part of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what is everyone's culture here? What is their cultural background? I mean, your cultural background.
I'm from Brazil.
I'm from the Philippines.
Everyone.
So yeah, my background is both German, Norwegian, and Taiwanese.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm just a traditional American with the Jewish heritage.
Mm-hmm. Roger?
Born here, but family is from Peru.
Mm-hmm. And Jane, did you get the chance to answer?
No, I didn't yet. Yeah, I guess I'm just very traditional American culture. A lot of Italian influences in my family, but yeah.
Interesting. And so, in what ways have you preserved your culture, and in what ways have you gone against it?
I think tradition is very important to the culture and history as it pertains to ever-changing culture dynamics. Right now, our American culture, as we know it, is changing very rapidly in lots of different directions. So maintaining one particular custom of a culture is very hard. But I think knowing the history of wherever you come from and preserving at least the understanding of it, even if you don't preserve the traditional elements of it, but preserving the mark that it made on the past and on who we are as individual people is really important. So for me, a lot of my Jewish heritage comes in with, how I raise my children, but not necessarily my American culture dynamics, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That does make sense. Anyone else?
Well, I
For
usually,
me, sorry,
they
please go
continue.
ahead.
Well, in my case, it's kind of complicated because in Brazil, things are more not very SJ like. So there are a lot of openness with some values, and generally, I don't really appreciate it all the time. But this country has an origin of Portuguese and the Catholic, so there are some things I really appreciate here, and I really try to understand and admire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that even if we are high SI users, we're not always very supportive of like everything that the culture says just because like personally it has to make sense to me in order to follow something. That's why in my own experience there are parts of my culture that I actually went against which might sound very not typical for an ISFJ, but like coming from the Philippines, we're very family oriented. It's normal for us to stay with the parents even after finishing college and even getting a full-time job. But as for me, I moved out when I was like 27 or 26. Even if I wasn't getting married yet, because the expectation is like you move out of the house once you're getting married, especially if you're a woman. So yeah, it has to make sense. We're very open to going against the culture if needed or if it makes sense. I guess that's
Mm-hmm.
where TI comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Roger?
Yeah, culture has just been so interesting. I mean, for me personally, being born here in America, like learning about how the culture is here versus what has been taught to me by my parents, what is taught to me from Peru, has always just been such a fascinating thing, and drove me to really understand other cultures and everything. I love learning about other cultures. It's fascinating to me. Um, I feel like my only, I guess, issue with that culture comes when a person becomes either too close-minded or starts feeling like this is the only way that works, this is my way or no other way. Um, doesn't appreciate or seek to want to understand other cultures apart from their own. I think that's kind of like the beginning when it comes to that. But aside from that, yeah, culture is amazing. I love learning about different places, different things, different people. So cool how we as humans have evolved and changed. It's amazing.
Yeah. So what is true about SI DOMs and culture and preservation, and what is false? So where does the stereotype come from, and how true is it, and to what point is it true?
I think the drive for SI DOMs that can be wanting to replicate what the generation before was able to establish, kind of that feeling of responsibility and duty to maintain a legacy, whether it's your parents or another authority figure that you respected. I think respect has a lot to do with it. The people that we respect, we want to emulate them. Obviously, whatever they did worked. And so we want to follow after that. And again, creating another replicable model for the next generation. So I think a lot of SI is to do with legacy. And when you lose the cultural element, you lose the legacy along with it. So I think that can be a pro and a con in and of itself, because like somebody else said, it has to be filtered through that TI model also, of being able to rectify what is truth versus fiction, and what applies to me, what do I align with, which I think we can learn a lot from FI users in that way too, is that individual element. So I think that it can be a sticking point for SI users.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a thing that I think that people forget is that our cultures are not made just by SJs, as made by everyone. So when we are preserving a culture, we are also preserving what NJs, SPs, and NFPs, NTPs did in the past. So culture is giving the more value to what was did, and also what will be done in the future. If it lasts, it will have more value.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And so what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue.
Jordan?
Okay, so this is a little bit nuanced, but a couple years ago, per all of the models that I'm fascinated with, I got into color analysis. And so I think it goes along with SI, that need for like sameness and compatibility. So colors that work well with the different people and their skin tones, their eye color, their hair color, I think those are my favorite colors. Like when somebody's wearing a color that fits their personality and their toning, that's my favorite color.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Danna? Jane?
My favorite color is black.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know why. I just like it.
And Jane?
Yeah, I really like pale pink.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think I really have a deeper reason for it either. I really like it.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. Okay, so moral of the story. Guys like the color blue generally. And so what is your preferred love language?
Sorry, like giving or receiving?
Both.
For me, acts of service for giving. Like, I like doing stuff for people. I like cooking for people. Actually, I feel like cooking for people should be a separate love language for me. Um, well, aside from that, I like quality time and physical touch for receiving, which is I think not a lot of ISFJs like physical touch, but I just heard. I don't know. I can't speak for everyone, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I'm the same.
Mine, I would say that it's physical touch. And unfortunately, I'm not used to words of affirmation. I'm generally I'm not comfortable with words of affirmation.
Then how do you feel about my compliments at the end, Samuel?
Well, I know that you're doing that for a good reason, and that's what I see F in general. It's like I appreciate that the act is the meaning itself. So I see what you're doing. That's why I appreciate it.
Thank you. Everyone else?
I would definitely say quality time and words of affirmation, both. And I think that on the flip side of that, it can tend to be how we abuse love and reject it when we feel rejected. We can also use what we prefer almost as a weapon against the other person. So I've definitely noticed that in some of my bad habits.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's words, actually. Yeah, words has definitely always had a huge impact for me. My second has been quality time, but yeah, words of affirmation, surprisingly, that's a definite high one for me. That's the highest one for me.
Yeah, me too. I'm words of affirmation and then quality time.
Yeah, words of affirmation and quality time for me too. It kind of flip-flops which one is higher.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And anyone else want to share? Oh, everyone went. All right, great. So how are ISFJs and ISTJs different from the INFP? Have you ever been confused or mistyped?
Not as INFP. No.
Well, I always knew I was an ISTJ, and I would say that like our main difference with ISTJs and INFPs are inferior function and second function. Like, we are less comfortable as ISTJs with like reframing things, and they are less comfortable with like sacrificing their own self. Like I see the value a lot of times of sacrificing what I want. And INFPs, they will feel more of the weight of doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense. How many of you thought you were INFJ? Yeah. Like half or more of ISFJs have thought they were INFJ at the beginning and then changed to ISFJ. Yeah, that's a thing. It really is a thing. And so, any questions you all have for each other?
Not specifically. The only one I thought was about the SITI and was already made it.
For sure, definitely. And so, what habits have you held on to for years but had difficulty breaking?
So she's gone now, but she mentioned earlier that ISFJs tend to have a hard time with physical touch, and I think that's because SE is much lower for us. Being married to an ISFP, I wouldn't say this is like a habit, but it's just something that came off the top of my head. Growing up in a very TE-oriented space, there was not a lot of physical affection. So for being FE, like I wanted the togetherness, but without the touch. So having a family came natural, but the things that came with having a family, being very cuddly and coddly, did not come natural to me. It came very natural to my ISFP husband. So that was definitely something I had to reframe in my mind and also retrain myself that this and I would say 3 out of 5 of my kids' top love language is physical touch. So again, that adaptability came into play with that. Still not supernatural, but fake it till I make it kind of thing.
I don't have a lot of things to say. Just at the beginning of development of my TE, it was quite hard to finally face extroversion. It was very complicated, but then I saw the value of extroversion. It's very important. And also I'm quite young, so I don't have that time to have long years of doing something. But now I'd say that like given value for intuition in general, I didn't do that my whole life. But when I started to learn MBTI, okay, that's useful and that's something I need to learn.
Yeah. Any other habits you guys have broken in your life that weren't healthy? Okay, 3, 2, 1. Are ISTJs and ISFJs often in their head instead of being aware of their surroundings?
Yes. And at random times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
I'll say
true.
that. I'll say that it's not probably it's not the same way like INJs will do, because I'll never lost the feeling of my body. It's all there all the time. It's more like that the atmosphere of what I'm sensing and what I'm remembering are all coming together into one thing. So I'll not be paying attention to what's happening like specifically outside, but I'll be aware of what I'm doing at the moment, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
think.
one thing, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go first.
I was gonna say is for me, I like to focus on one thing at a time. So there could be 10 things I need to do. It's on my list on my whiteboard, but I want to focus on one thing at a time. I can't get distracted from that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. We tend to be hyper focused on one thing at a time until like we follow it all the way through before we can allow ourselves the brain space to move on to something else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that hyper focus causes a lack of awareness of the surroundings, like the general.
Mm-hmm. And I think it puts a lot of pressure on the NE element too, to be spread thin. It could, because NEs are great multitaskers. They're able to just hold a lot of things at one time, and we can't. And so when there's a lot of movement, specifically for me, it has to do with an SE type of movement. When there's a lot of that going on, or there's a lot of demands happening at the same time, it can cause me to go even further into that SI place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One thing to add is sometimes I might be asked a question by somebody and I don't get back to them until 5 minutes later. And at that point they said, I asked you this question 5 minutes ago. Why didn't you respond? Because I was focused on something else.
Okay, so on that note, do you guys tend to be able to hold like a pin in a conversation when it gets derailed? Are you able to hold a pin there and come back around to it? Okay, because I do that a lot, and my mom's INFJ, and I'm surrounded by a lot of intuitive people in my sphere, and so they tend to have less of a harder time doing that, and so they kind of rely on me to be like, okay, Jordan, where were we in the conversation before we went on this rabbit trail? So I can usually come back around to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense. And so the next question is, when you feel trapped or down, so depressed as an ISFJ, how can someone help you in that state?
Well,
When you're sad, what? Oh yeah.
I'll say that for me specifically, I don't like anyone minding my business. I know that people want to help, but for me, if I talking about two other people, I losing my strength and I can't face the problem with seriousness. So when I'm sad, like I need to come back, take it all together, face it, and then I'll solve it and I'll be better.
Mm-hmm. So you guys mentioned words of affirmation, the ISFJs. So when you're down, can someone saying really sweet things that are true, like lift you up? Yeah.
I think that can help. I think I would say relieving the pressure, like maybe taking some of the responsibility, allowing there to be room to breathe, because I think SIs can kind of, like I said, hyper focus on one thing at a time when they have like 10 other things they need to get done. So maybe taking one of the other 10 things off their plate can be really helpful. Also, I'm sure it has to do with Enneagram type, but I think for me, my disintegration of 4, kind of feeling unheard, misunderstood. So like just allowing there to be space for the ISFJ specifically, I don't know if this is the same for ISTJs, to be able to express, because it might take us a long time to formulate what we're trying to get across, because we're going to try to use a lot of data points in explaining it, not a whole lot of feeling. So just allowing that space to be heard and validated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else want to add to that last question? Or would you? Yep, Jane?
I think that something that is very helpful is for someone to remind me of like basically the way that I think things are happening or are inevitably going to happen isn't necessarily like the only way. Like there are a lot of times I just I need some alternative perspectives, and for people to say like, no, it's okay, like it's gonna work out, or like it could be that it's not necessarily what you're thinking. Yeah, and also just to remind me like of what I'm good at and my strengths, I guess. Because yeah.
These are really good tips on how to love your person or ISFJ better. I think it can generally help people, but it's also good for ISFJs as well. To remind, when people are sad, sometimes they need perspective and to be reminded of their strengths. So if you can shine that perspective on their life and to show them their purpose here on Earth, it can really revitalize some people, at least slightly. And so the next question, do you ever feel pressured into doing something or attending an event, then feel like a bad person for saying no or choosing another group?
So for me, I volunteered. Every couple of years, something comes up where I want to volunteer for something, or I'm asked to volunteer for something, and I found that if I say yes, I have to commit to that, and I have to go through with that because part of me wants to consider others and help others. And then I find, though, sometimes I find something about that volunteer work that I don't agree with, or people that I don't agree with or don't want to be involved with. So then it's hard to get out of that situation, that I feel like, oh, I said yes to this, I have to continue with this. But in volunteering, it's giving your all to that. So if I'm going to give something, I'm going to give all to that. And if I can't do that, then I feel bad about it.
Yeah. Roger, you seemed like you don't like saying no too, as an Enneagram 9 especially.
Surprisingly, I used to feel that way a lot, but I don't feel as bad saying no anymore. Like I think like the first example that came up, like say like if one of my friends had a party and they really wanted me to come, but I had no interest in going. If I do just for the sake of my friend, what kind of person will I be at that party? Am I really going to be my best self? Am I really going to enjoy? And as a product of that, are they going to enjoy me being there? No. So why go through that whole effort? Why go through that whole ordeal when you could just say simple no, like, hey, look, I'm just really not interested. I'm sorry. Respecting yourself, giving yourself those boundaries, and moving on from there. I mean, I think for me, if something like that specifically happened, then I would try to make it happen. It's like, okay, yeah, I guess I can't really get to this party, but we should totally hang out sometime, or we should totally do something else.
You have really good, you've grown to have really good boundary setting, Roger. Like your practices include a lot of self-compassion. It's like, well, if I'm saying yes to you but no to me, then it's ultimately not healthy for me. So there's a lot of great words of wisdom you have in that, Roger, where you're like, you got to do the things that are uncomfortable to say, but are good for you in the long term. Yeah, I admire that. Yeah. So ISFJs and ISTJs relationship with procrastination.
I'll just add for the last question that I generally don't feel bad, like if someone expects me to do something, but if I see a reason, like if I'm at a job or it's a family meeting, I see a reason that why I should be there, and I'm not able to be there, then I'll be like sad, like I'm not like that. But it's like expectations, like we would like for you to be there. I will not be sad.
Yeah, I think expectations are a huge hang up for SI people, because it's this fear of letting people down or falling through on your end of the deal, or your responsibilities. And so I think that like Roger's saying, allowing yourself to set those boundaries, and maybe for us it's a TI element of what makes sense for the arrangement, for ourselves, for the people that we're responsible for, allowing us to make logical sense about that decision. For me, it's a time management thing. Sometimes I'll get places too early because I'm afraid of being late, or whatever, an inconvenience to someone else. But then it turns out that they really didn't want me to get there that early. or the same thing with like sometimes coaching sessions will run long because I feel like if I don't give them more of my time, then they're not getting the full benefit of our interaction, you know, but then that ends up taking away time from my family, myself, you know. So I think, you know, strengthening TI in that element has to, like, you have to make sense of what this expectation really is.
For sure. And so, do you guys get offended easily? Oh.
What's the previous question? Like,
Yes, yes.
Oh yeah, I think we missed that one.
ISFJs and ISTJs and procrastination. Rob?
Yeah, I think for me, sometimes I wait for too many details. That I want all the information. I want to plan. I want to know what I need to accomplish before I start something. And so sometimes what I do to deal with that is I set some deadlines. And sometimes I put myself out there and say, "Oh, we're going to provide an update on this date." That way, I make sure I keep on task with things. I think too is sometimes I'm a perfectionist, so I want things to just come off right. So I have to deal with that. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, that we like to have focus on one thing at a time. So sometimes I do things in bite-sized chunks. That way I can chomp off a big bit of it.
Yeah. There's that saying, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So it's kind of what it means is that to get a big task done, you have to break it down into small tasks. Yeah, that's a general also rule for getting things done. If you want to get things done, generally you'll have to break them down into smaller components and then finish those smaller components. So that's an expert life hack. Oh, yeah, my bad. Did anyone else want to answer the procrastination question?
I would say that TE is what saves me from procrastination, because sometimes I just want to keep thinking about things I'm working on, like side things, but sometimes like I have to do something. So it's reasonable to do that, and then TE will save me from procrastination.
True. And so, what is everyone's favorite movie?
This may be contrary to other SI people, but I don't tend to watch movies more than a couple of times. And my favorite movies tend to be movies from my childhood, things that I can rewatch with my kids, movies that had like an impactful element in a certain season of my life, you know. So it's a lot about the nostalgic element to it. But I don't usually watch movies more than once, even my favorite ones.
Well, I don't remember
Roger?
any specific movie.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I guess contrary to that, yeah, I love rewatching movies. I feel like I can just always find something different, something else to observe that I didn't see before, and I really like doing that. Like, even watching the same kind of TV shows, like I just feel like there's always something else. Like, if I, rather than paying attention to what's being said, like looking in the background, looking for other things that are going on. So I actually personally love rewatching movies and TV shows. But
Yeah,
man,
which
favorite
ones
movie,
though?
which movies? Yeah, that's man. There's so many movies, and they all have different things. Like, I mean, for like Christmas movies, like I really like during Christmas time, of course, like watching like Home Alone or thing like Santa Claus as well. Yeah, whatever fits the mood, whatever fits the environment. Those are the kind of movie that I tend to like. It's so hard to choose just one favorite movie though.
Yeah. And Jane, if you want to share.
I don't think I have like a singular favorite movie, but I definitely like the ones that I really like. I tend to watch several times. Because I mean, I really know that I like them, and in general, I tend to really like movies that more like feel good movies. Like I really like rom-coms. I appreciate just being able to kind of escape. Like, I guess, for example, a recent one I really like To All the Boys I've Loved Before, and like Crazy Rich Asians. And also Devil Wears Prada. So maybe none of them are like that serious, but I don't know. That's usually what I'm looking for in a movie. It's just I just want to like feel good and have a good time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my ISFJ friend is trying to get me to watch Crazy Rich Asians as well.
It's so good. You should watch. It's so cute and funny.
Mm-hmm. And so, what is your best quality or superpower?
I think my best quality is listening to others. I spend more time listening than talking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Everyone else?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely just being able to be in tune with other people's emotions. Like with the people that I meet, even if I don't really know them too well, like I can feel what they're feeling. I really take a lot of pride, and I love that aspect of FE, of being able to understand other people's emotions and feelings. It's just such a double-edged sword when you can't understand your own very well, but it's something that I do really like and enjoy. I feel like that's one of my best qualities, being able to feel other people's feelings.
Mm-hmm. Jordan?
I'm trying to think of what other people would say about me. I guess I would definitely say I'm a natural born teacher. I relay information really well, and I find a way to adapt it to the listener based on what I know of them as an individual and like how they'll receive the information. So it comes in handy when you're trying to resolve conflict between people, or like I do a lot of relationship coaching. So allowing space for them to hear each other out, maybe rewording things in a way that might be more palpable for them.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
I'm gonna agree. Oh, sorry.
No, continue.
I'm gonna agree with like understanding people. Just kind of really like seeing, like, I don't know, like what they're thinking, where they're coming from. And somewhat recently, I think I've really been developing the skill of like connecting people as well. Yeah, like for example, in my workplace, and it's really cool because it's something I really do as much when I was younger. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, the best thing I can think is just to be able to use SI as an SI zone. Is the only thing I can think about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those are really amazing superpowers. How about like a phrase for the superpower? Like, I don't know, like supersonic listening or powerful relating. I don't know. Something that sounds like a Marvel movie.
More.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't have anyone.
It's totally okay. Okay, so last question for tonight. What MBTI type is your closest friend?
INTJ, and I've known them over 20 years.
Mm-hmm. What do you love about your INTJ friend?
To analyze the situation, they can really dive in and extract things out that I wouldn't know.
Yeah. How about you, Jordan?
I would definitely have to say my husband. He's an ISFP, and several other really close friends of mine are ISFPs. I have very few ISFJ friends, a few ENFPs, ESFPs, and every now and then I'll get one of those INTP friends that like just there's just something about them. I mean, it's probably the TI element we just connect on.
So true. And Roger?
It's hard to say because I have a lot of friends actually that are like my closest friends that I would consider my best friends. The ones that I have are ESTJ, 3 ENFPs. Well, I guess I could say my sister too, but then that might be a bit more like, I guess, on the like interpersonal side. She's an ISTP, but we get along very, very well. But the longest friendship that I do have is with that ESTJ. We've known each other we're getting close to the 20 years. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but I think it's been like about 15 years that we've known each other now. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. 3 ENFPs. Wow. There should really be a video that's like ISFJs and ENFPs now and their friend compatibility. I don't know. And Jane?
Kind of similar situation where I can't really identify like a closest friend because I feel like I have a lot of people that I'm close to. The types that I'm thinking of, though, I have a really good friend who's ENFJ. One of my close friends, we think, is ISTJ. I have a few ENFP and INFP friends that are really good friends. Some of them I've known for only a few years because like I met them in college or something. But like one of my friends I've known, I don't know, more than 2 years. So yeah, or like even another friend, I think we've known each other basically our whole lives. Yeah, so the shared history really, but it's sometimes you just connect with someone so well that it's like instantly on the same plane as someone that you've known for a long time.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And Samuel?
Well, my closest friends are not as close as probably like the closest friends, but I would say that he's an ISFP. I've known him for 6 years, and what I see that's very valuable about him is his understanding about what he wants is very, very nuanced.
Mm-hmm. That was really heartfelt to hear all of your best friends. Yeah. And so thank you, ISFJs, for coming out and sharing your ISFJ perspective and ISTJ perspective, Samuel. You are the one ISTJ here, repping the ISTJs. Yeah, whoop, whoop. Yeah, it was really great to hear your perspective with a dash of TE in it. It's always amazing to have that there. Yeah. And I love how nerdy you get into theory, Samuel. Like you'll start talking about like SI in a very like theoretical way, and I love it. And I'm like, this is how you know how much Samuel loves type. he's very nerdy about it, and I appreciate that tenfold. Yeah. And Jane, I really love your quotes. You always like when you come to a panel, you're like, you know, I watched this show, I took away this amazing quote, and I'm going to share it all with you. So you're like the quote sage. You just give us many quotes, and you embark us with a lot of wisdoms from it. Yeah. So thank you for keeping so many quotes in your file cabinet. Like your file cabinets have the best quotes, and I really love them. You're
Thank
like
you so much.
Yeah. You're like a human. Yeah. You're like a human motivational Pinterest page where I'm like reading all these amazing quotes, and I'm like, yeah, I feel inspired for the day. Yeah.
I actually love that. Thank you. And you're welcome like that.
Yeah. And Rob, I really like your penguin animal for the ISFJ. It's very fitting for the ISFJ, and I think a lot of male ISFJs would relate to the penguin, and you did a perfect job picking that. Yeah. And I loved your explanation of SI and your ability to call it that file cabinet, and I'm like, yeah, bang on, Rob. Yeah. And you were just so spot on with your comments about the fear of the unknown being the inferior NE, like you know your theory. I love how you've been studying it. It's like you've been preparing for this panel. It's like, yeah, and I love your preparatory nature where you're just preparing, and it makes me feel cared about because you put a lot of thought into these panels. You have a mic stand, like headphones. You have everything set up. I love that. It shows that you care, you know, and that means a lot to me.
Thank you,
and
Joyce.
Mm-hmm. And Jordan, I really like how you called SI synchronicity. I've never heard it said like that before. So you add an interesting spin to the function. Like it really is like seeing what is in sync and what is out of sync, and then kind of trying to calibrate that. And I was like, I never knew that it could be put that way. So thank you for switching up the definition of SI and making it broader, because I like that, because I like to see new ways to think about the functions, because a lot of people, they'll just regurgitate what they hear, but then you found a new way to put SI. So that was really mind-blowing. I liked learning that. Yeah. And by using that word, you're able to give me an insight into your mind. And I feel like I'm able to understand how your mind works more too. And so thank you for that double whammy there. And by the way, you're just the warmest human being ever. Like when I get your voice messages, like they're so warm. They have that FE warmth. Like I feel like hugged by your voice. It's weird. Like I feel like you're not only a mom to your 5 children, you're like a mom to anyone who gets to hear your voice too. Like
I've heard that before. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I feel nurtured. Yes.
I'm happy to be everybody's mama.
Yes. Yeah, and Roger, I very much appreciate your you handle situations in a very mature way. Like I notice with your perspectives, you try to pick the most mature route, like the best route, that has the most self-compassion, that has the most boundaries, because ultimately that is the best way to go about the situation. So I really admire that you really give yourself that space, So I love that you're an example and a model for self-compassion to a lot of people. Yeah. And I like how you're a 9. So you sometimes let other people have the spotlight more than you do. But when you get to talk, when I call you out, sometimes like I'm like, Roger, speak, because sometimes you won't speak until I call you. When you do talk, I'm very wowed and I really enjoy listening. Yeah, and I think you do a great job moderating the ISFJ Facebook group as well. Yeah, so good on you with that. And so yeah, thank you ISFJs for your nurturing, kind demeanor and for your ability to really defend the lifestyles that you see that are great. So it really creates really great societies and great places when we have people who protect the things that are working, protect things that are going well. It's kind of like you keep society functioning. If we didn't have you, the society, there would be fires everywhere. Fire. So I appreciate you ISFJs being able to have that consistency, dutifulness, responsibility that keeps the world running. And whenever y'all are in charge of people, you are great, like at meeting people's needs. Like you have a natural attunement to people's needs, and you really are able to meet needs in a way that fills us up, And I really enjoyed the words of affirmation y'all gave me. that was an amazing part of the panel too. Thank you for the words of affirmation. They fill me up like fuel. So thank you for fueling me. And I just love you guys. Yeah. And thank you, live chat members, for asking such great questions. They were really fun to answer. You had a mix of serious questions like depressed ISFJs and how to help them out, to very fun ones like what is your favorite color and your favorite movie. So I loved how you guys were mixing it up. All right. So thank you, everyone, for watching. And thank you, panelists, for being your wonderful selves. And I'll see everyone in the next episode.
Thank you,
Bye.
Joyce. Bye.